Well, hello, my friends. This is Shawn Petite for DecoArt's Media Design Team, and I'm so glad to present this project for you today, this cute winter barn. I'm going to show you how to make this so easy using some really great products from DecoArt and some palette knives and brushes and some vintage papers. And so I'm creating today on an 8x8 MDF board, and I have some vintage papers that I'm going to put down with my DecoArt matte medium. And I know that I want the postcard writing to really show up in the background. So I place those in a place where I think that they'll show up the most. I think that the writing will really add a lot of character and interest to the background. And then I've got some vintage music sheet paper here that I'm putting down that a lot of it will get covered up, but it's the little bits and pieces that show through that I call magic, and it just adds so much character to your piece. Plus, it adds an additional bit of texture to your piece when you've got some papers and things underneath. So now I'm going to just sketch out my barn. I'm using an Inktense pencil, and the reason I'm using that is because it's water soluble and it'll kind of blend away and add to some shading. You can trace a barn, you can have a reference picture, something like that. I'm just kind of going off of what I have in my mind. So now I'm just going to start blocking everything in, and I'm using some cobalt teal and some titanium white to kind of make the sky. And I wanted it a little bit teal, a little bit different, and I watered it down so that you could see all those wonderful vintage papers in the background. Now I'm adding just a tiny bit of gesso for the bottom down there because that's the ground, that's where the snow is going to be, and so I want it to be textural and thick and kind of chunky and chalky, and so I added the gesso. Now I've got three colors out here. I've got transparent yellow oxide, medium gray, and Titan buff. And Titan buff is going to be the base for the barn, and I'm using a medium-sized palette knife. I'll switch between a couple different sizes of palette knives, but I'm just kind of getting the basic shape locked in using my palette knife, not being too particular about it, but just getting the shape. And I am going up and down to mimic, say, barnwood and that kind of thing. You could go vertical as well, but I wanted to go straight up and down to just kind of give that barnwood feel. Then and I'm mixing my paints with a little bit of gesso, and I'm adding just tiny bits here and there, some gray and my oxide. Now I'm coming back in with some umber, just tiny bits, and I'm using a square palette knife, just tiny bits to kind of blend in to add that kind of shading, aging, definition, and to give it some interest. Now I'm mixing raw umber and carbon black to create basically the shadow of my door and my windows. I do pull it back and make it kind of light and again shadowy. Now I am mixing my paint, that same mixture of raw umber and carbon black, with a tiny bit of gesso. And part of that reason is because I want it a little bit thicker, so that I've got some dimension, and because it works better on my palette knife. And I'm just tracing around my barn now, creating details with my palette knife. And I love using a palette knife because it gives it a real organic, unpredictable feel versus using, say, a paintbrush or a pen or something like that. You just sometimes don't know what you're going to get, and I love that because it looks really rustic. And so I'm just adding some highlights here, or lowlights I should say, my shadowing, again with my palette knife. I'm going back in with just a tiny bit of gray now at the bottom, just so that when I put some white over the top of it, it's got some contrast. And so now I'm taking my gesso and just really laying it on thick to represent snow. Now I love me some crackle paint, and so I just grabbed a tiny bit of crackle paint here and there, and you'll see it in the end with the pictures. It just is so yummy. So now I'm mixing some heavy gloss gel and titanium white, and the reason I did this is because I wanted it to be super thick and it's gonna dry shiny. And it I wanted that shiny so that it looked like the snow kind of sparkling in the sun. And you'll be able to see some of that shine towards the end. But it just turned out so beautifully, and it creates such a nice, rich, thick texture so that it's different than the paint and it really stands out. Now I'm just skimming over the back to try and represent some type of falling snow. And when it dries, it is shiny and gorgeous. In some areas, there wasn't all the titanium white, so it's just clear and shiny like you would see as snow is falling. It turned out perfectly. Trying to show you some shine there. So now I just want to kind of tone everything down. I've got all of those yummy, yummy layers and colors, and I'm just going back over it with some of the gray and really watered down, and then just picking it back up with a rag, and it just tones everything down and brings everything together. So now I'm mixing some sap green with the gray and a tiny bit of white or Titan Buff to get the color that I was looking for the wreath, and then I can vary that in different depths of color too. And I'm just filling in, just kind of putting my brush down, no plan, but just to kind of make that wreath. And then I come back in and bring some swooshes in with my palette knife to blend it in with the rest of the piece. It has to have some snow on it, so I'm adding my snow. And a few little berries, and I used a little bit of quinacridone magenta for that. Adding just a few more drops of snow. And this is about the quickest and easiest barn you'll ever make. So I'm just finishing things up now by using a charcoal pencil to add some additional shading and to further define the piece. I will shade around the edges as well with a black soft chalk pastel. And that's it, my friends. Super, super easy. All of the supplies will be listed in detail on the DecoArt Mixed Media blog, and I hope you check that out to see myself and all the other artists and all of the projects that we have done for DecoArt Media Design Team. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this project, and I will see you next time.